Before we begin, if you love deep, emotional stories that feel real enough to touch, make sure you subscribe to the channel right now. Turn on notifications so you never miss a story that might just change the way you see love, marriage, and the quiet moments in between. Your support means everything. And trust me, this one, you'll want to stay until the very end. Sometimes, the smallest changes are the ones that leave the deepest scars. Not shouting, not betrayal, not slammed doors or broken plates, just silence. Emily sat alone at the kitchen table, her fingers loosely wrapped around a ceramic mug of chamomile tea that had long ago surrendered its warmth. The steam had disappeared. The surface had gone still. The clock on the microwave blinked 12:07 a.m. in dull green numbers, as if even time itself was tired of waiting. The house was quiet, but not peaceful quiet. It was the heavy kind. The kind that presses against your ribs and makes breathing feel like work. The kind that stretches too far, too wide. The kind that reminds you just how alone you are, even when you're married. The refrigerator hummed steadily, a low mechanical sound filling the space where laughter once lived. Down the hallway, the wooden floor creaked softly as the house settled into the night. An old sigh, a tired exhale. Dinner sat untouched in front of her. Hours ago, it had been warm and carefully plated. She had timed everything perfectly. The pasta al dente, the sauce simmered slowly with garlic and basil, the bread lightly toasted at the edges. She had even lit a candle. She used to love cooking for him. There had been a time when timing mattered. When he'd text her from work, "Leaving now. Can't wait to see you." When she would hear his car pull into the driveway and her heart would leap without permission. When he would rush through the door, drop his briefcase carelessly, and wrap his arms around her before she could even ask how his day went. Now she stared at stiff noodles and dried sauce at the edge of the plate. She had promised herself she wouldn't wait tonight. She had told herself she would eat alone. Maybe turn on the television. Watch something mindless. Go to bed early. She had even sworn she wouldn't check the clock. But here she was. Waiting. Waiting for a man who once couldn't get home fast enough. Waiting for a man who used to look at her like she was the center of his world. Waiting for someone who now felt more like a shadow than a husband. The front door finally clicked open. Her head lifted instantly. Not because she meant to, but because hope is stubborn. Because even when it's bruised, even when it's exhausted, it refuses to die quietly. David stepped inside. His tie was loose. His shirt slightly wrinkled. His shoulders curved inward as though the day had folded him in half. He shut the door with a soft thud and exhaled. He didn't notice the candle. He didn't notice the food. He didn't notice the way Emily straightened in her chair, trying to make herself visible. "You didn't have to wait up," he said gently, pressing a distracted kiss to the top of her head as he passed. He didn't stop walking. He was already halfway up the stairs. Emily stayed where she was, listening to his footsteps fade into the distance. And in the quiet that followed, something settled deep inside her chest. Heavy, dull, aching. There was a time when she loved the sound of that door unlocking, the rush of footsteps, the warmth of his embrace, the way he would talk about every detail of his day like she was the only person who mattered enough to hear it. Now she lived with someone who felt like a polite stranger, someone who shared her bed, but not her thoughts, not her heart, not her life. Morning didn't bring relief. David was already dressed when Emily entered the kitchen. His laptop bag hung from his shoulder. His phone glowed in his hand as his thumb scrolled endlessly through emails. She moved quietly, cracking eggs into a pan. The butter sizzled softly. The scent filled the air. "Coffee's ready," she said gently. "Thanks," he replied, barely glancing up. He took a few distracted bites of breakfast, chewing without tasting. His eyes flicked to his watch. "Running late," he muttered, grabbing his keys. The door shut before she could finish the sentence forming in her mouth. She stood there for a moment, spatula in hand, listening to the echo of his absence. Then she turned off the stove, scraped the barely touched food into the trash, and began cleaning. The dishes, the counter, the silence. After her shower, she wandered into the living room and sat on the couch. The house felt too large when she was alone. The walls too wide. The ceilings too tall. as if the space itself had been stretching away from her for years. By noon, she felt like she couldn't breathe. "I need to get out," she whispered to herself. So she grabbed her keys. The farmer's market was alive. It pulsed with color and movement and noise. Vendors called out prices in cheerful voices. Children darted between stalls with sticky fingers and bright laughter. The scent of fresh bread and citrus filled the air. For the first time that day, Emily felt something loosen inside her chest. Here, no one knew she was lonely. Here, she was just another person walking through sunlight. She wandered slowly, examining peaches, tomatoes, fresh flowers tied in twine. She paused at a stand of handmade candles and ran her fingers lightly over the smooth glass jars. It felt good to exist in a space where people weren't rushing past her without seeing her. And then she noticed him. He stood near a fruit stand, holding a peach in his palm, turning it slowly as if he had all the time in the world. He was tall, broad-shouldered. There was something effortless about the way he carried himself. Not arrogant, not showy, just present, like he wasn't in a hurry to be anywhere else. Emily caught herself looking twice, not because he was simply attractive, but because he looked awake. When he noticed her gaze, he smiled. Not rushed, not distracted, warm. "Good peaches today," he said, nodding toward the basket in her hands. Her cheeks warmed unexpectedly. "Yes," she replied softly. "They're my favorite." They spoke for less than a minute. About the weather. About which vendor had the best produce. About how summer always made fruit taste sweeter. Nothing personal. Nothing meaningful. And yet, something in the way he listened made her feel different. Seen. Like she wasn't fading into the background of her own life. When she returned to her car, she sat behind the steering wheel longer than she intended. Her heart was racing. It was just a conversation. Just a stranger. So why did it feel like more? That night, David was late again. Emily ate alone, the television murmuring softly in the background. She thought about mentioning the man at the market. Not because it mattered, but because it felt nice to talk about something. Anything. But she already knew how it would go. "That's nice," he would say. Without looking up. Without asking a question. Without really hearing her. So she said nothing. Days passed. And without fully admitting it to herself, Emily found reasons to return to the market. Fresh fruit. Fresh air. That's all. At least, that's what she told herself. Until she saw him again. This time he noticed her first. "You again," he said with a playful grin. She laughed softly. "Igas I'm predictable." "Or consistent," he replied. They talked longer this time. About books. About music. About how some songs feel like memories even if you've never heard them before. He told her his name was Marcus. He lived a few streets away. He worked from home. He liked the market because it forced him to slow down. Emily drove home that day feeling lighter than she had in months. Like someone had opened a window inside her chest. She cooked dinner with energy she hadn't felt in years, humming under her breath. But when David came home late again, murmuring the same tired apology, the warmth drained from her almost instantly. That night, lying beside him in the dark, she stared at the ceiling. Her thoughts drifted back to Marcus. The way he listened. The way he held eye contact. The way he said her name. "It was just a conversation," she whispered into the darkness. But deep down, she knew it wasn't just that anymore. The shift didn't happen all at once. There was no dramatic moment. No confession. No line crossed in bold ink. It was subtle. It lived in small things. In the way she smiled to herself while folding laundry. In the way music sounded fuller when she cooked. In the way the silence at home felt louder than ever. Marcus became a quiet thought she carried with her. Carefully. Like something fragile she didn't dare examine too closely. One evening, during dinner, Emily finally spoke. "Do you ever feel like we've drifted?" she asked softly. David looked up, surprised. "I don't know," he said after a pause. "Work's just been busy." That was it. No follow-up. No concern. No. "Why do you ask?" Emily forced a small smile. "Yeah, of course." But inside, something cracked. Not loudly. Not violently. Just enough to let the cold air in. The following week, She stood in front of the mirror longer than usual. She brushed her hair twice, changed her shirt, then changed it again. She told herself it was ridiculous. She wasn't going anywhere special. And yet when she arrived at the market and saw Marcus near the bread stall, her heart fluttered. "Emily," he said, smiling in a way that felt intentional. "You remembered," she replied. "You're not exactly easy to forget." The words sank deep. They walked together that day, slowly, letting the crowd flow around them. Conversation came easily. She told him about painting, how she used to lose hours mixing colors, how it made her feel alive, how she hadn't touched a brush in years. "What stopped you?" he asked gently. She hesitated. "I guess life." He looked at her for a moment. Life shouldn't take away the things that make you feel alive. No one had said something like that to her in a long time. That night, lying in bed beside her husband, Emily realized something terrifying. She wasn't just lonely. She was disappearing. And for the first time in years, someone had noticed that if you've made it this far, take a second and subscribe. Because this story, it's only beginning. And what happens next will change everything Emily thought she understood about love, loyalty, and herself. The real question isn't whether she'll cross the line. The real question is, was the line already crossed the moment she felt seen?